Okay, I'm still reading from book one of my collected writings from Soka, University of America. The first book I should put at the end now that it's so far past the Bush administration, which I was so pissed off at during that time that I wrote all these essays because of the war on Iraq and Afghanistan, which were completely unprovoked and completely unnecessary and completely illegal and completely immoral. So I really need to put that towards the back because there's so many writings in this that if you don't get past those first, you're going to maybe be turned off. So I was thinking of putting book 3 as number 1 eventually when I redo this. Okay, this is The Fallacy of Democracy. Tim wrote this piece in his American Experience class during his second year at SUA, which was 2003-04. Shortly after Bush's war on the people of Iraq. Elections in America give the public some semblance of democracy in an otherwise completely capitalistic and plutocratic system. Plutocracy is the rule by criminals. So the corporate media, money, and the two-party duopoly all work in collusion to deceive the public into believing that they have some say in a system which the rich and powerful almost completely control. Media control is one way this corrupt system is able to perpetuate itself. The largest corporate conglomerates own the media in America. One such company, Clear Channel Communication, owns almost half of the radio stations in America. This was in 2003 and 4 when I wrote this. I don't know now. I don't think anyone listens to fucking radio and TV anymore, so it's all podcasts, which weren't around at this time. A handful of U.S. corporations own the largest television stations in America. Those corporations are such names as GE, Westinghouse, and TRW. I have footnote 1 here. Let's read it. Footnote 1 says, at the time of the writing, now many other big companies have become involved in media ownership, but all equally as corrupting to the free flow of accurate news. Okay. 3 of the most powerful military-industrial corporations, GE, Westinghouse, and TRW. During elections, the corporate media in America makes sure no candidates except those representing the two capitalist parties get sufficient airplay on the major media networks. Those corporations buy and sell the candidates of both parties. When such candidates return to Washington, now embedded with big business, they represent a corporate agenda over an agenda of the common people. Yes, there is some small difference between the two capitalist parties. However, overall, when dealing with such issues as corporate managed trade, NAFTA, GATT, WTO, World Bank, IMF, there is almost no difference between the two parties. When dealing with the issue of an out-of-control growth in the prison industrial complex, there is almost no difference. When dealing with the issue of an out-of-control growth of the military-industrial complex, there is almost no difference. When dealing with the issues of destruction of the environment, media, and corporate consolidation, the de-unionization of the U.S. and the world, the two parties are becoming closer and closer aligned with corporate America's stance on these issues and further away from the general public stance. The one corporation that hosts and controls the rules in the corporate televised sponsored political debates, the Commission on Presidential Debates, CPD, makes sure that the rules to get into the debates exclude any parties such as the Green Party, which refuses to take corporate money or represent their moneyed agenda. This private corporation takes money from the same transnational corporations that finance the two capitalist parties. It also ensures that the questions in the debates represent those companies' concerns, not the public's. So not only does the corporation CPD control how people think, but also what they think about when it comes to elections. To keep the public confused, scared, and alienated, the corporate quote-unquote news distracts TV viewers by overemphasizing small civil crimes while completely ignoring more severe corporate crimes and government crimes. This distraction keeps misinformed TV viewers constantly fearful of the public, while at the same time making them completely oblivious to larger corporate and government criminals. Instead of having the public fear corporate and government criminals as they should, the corporate media glamorizes and creates undeserving images of these rich and powerful people. These images cause the public to, instead of being vigilant of the rich and powerful, pay them undue respect and adoration. In cases of mass robbery, such as the Enron price manipulation and false blackouts in California, the media, instead of focusing on this corporate scandal, tried instead to distract attention from this debate by instead playing up minor police chases of petty offenders of street crime. Then, when corporate scandals such as Enron and Tyco become so severe that even the corporate media could no longer ignore the issue, the military-owned media quickly distracts the public by playing into an unelected so-called president's false attempts to brand a third world nation, Iraq, as a, quote, threat to the safety of the U.S., end quote, rather than questioning the obvious insanity of the president's erroneous claims for war. The media instead became his biggest cheerleaders for war. I'm glad that people that I hated at the time that promoted the war, a lot of them are coming out that they were wrong about supporting the war. I was right from before even the war started, to just like the hundreds of thousands of people all around the nation and millions around the world that were marching in the streets against Bush's planned Iraq war, like we did from SUA to the Chet Holyfield Federal Building in Laguna Niguel. The corporate media beat the drums of war so loud. Sorry. Ooh, I'm going to turn this off. The corporate media beat the drums of war so loud, in fact, that they quickly drowned out any resemblance of the previous corporate scandals from the public's mind. Then, within a week, the misinformed public quickly forget all about Enron. Even the largest political scandal of the new century, the stealing of the White House by Mr. Bush and his crime syndicate, only got a short deal of watered-down coverage. However, the corporate media never thoroughly investigated this election scandal. Had it occurred in another country that was unfriendly to the U.S. business interests, the U.S. government and media would have been screaming to the United Nations that they needed to have a new election with UN monitors, which they should have in the 2000 and the 2004, which were two stolen elections by the crime family, Bush crime family. Commercialization and corporatization of the so-called public broadcasting network, PBS, in the U.S. have also caused stations which say they are non-commercial, like NPR, to increasingly take underwriting from large transnational corporations like Archer Daniels Midland Company, ADM. Along with this, Washington spin doctors and corporate managers have increasingly infiltrated even the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPB, which the people instituted to keep the public airwaves public and to fight against the increased privatization of those airwaves. The two parties keep the people thinking they have a real choice. They vie with one another over meaningless incidences like whether a president had extramarital affairs. However, when it comes to large issues like whether to bomb a neutral country like Iraq, both parties march in lockstep, knowing their biggest contributors in the military-industrial complex will be happy to profit on another war. Yes, there are a few dissenting voices for war in the Democratic Party. Therefore, people feel there is a difference between them and the Republicans. However, even with a so-called, quote, liberal Democrat, end quote, like Bill Clinton, when it came to bombing a neutral country like Yugoslavia, both parties marched happily to the drumbeat of war. Ways to change this extremely corrupt system would be to have public financing of all elections and public financing of all political parties. Another way would be to have proportional representation so that parties like the Green Party, who gain 3% of the votes, get 3% of the seats in government. A lot of European countries do that. Everyone knows, though, that if the CPD allowed a candidate like Ralph Nader into the presidential debates, he would have taken a much higher percentage of votes than he did. He would have also made the horse and pony show that they call a debate resemble a real debate. This is why the two-party duopoly fought so hard to keep him out of the debates. The public should never allow corporations to bribe political candidates with money. No one should be able to give money to a political candidate. People should make all forms of bribery illegal. If we ever are to have a democracy, candidates should represent all people's interests equally, without respect to how much money an individual gives to their candidacy. When people allow candidates to take large amounts of money from huge organizations or individuals, those candidates will naturally give the organization or individual favorable treatment. This is not democracy. This is the rule of money, otherwise known as plutocracy. Oh, kleptocracy is the rule of criminals, but we have a plutocracy and a kleptocracy. So plutocracy is the rule by money. We must put an end to this corrupt system and demand the end of corporate rule. Okay, my next one is the World Bank Group and the manufacturing of global financial crisis. This was Tim's first learning cluster report from his freshman year, writing in 2002. After 50 years in business, I'm going to start this on a new video.